Well, you may have heard of Robert Kiyosaki. He's the businessman behind Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book that gave birth to a hugely popular self-help empire promoting financial independence and wealth creation. Well, our next guest actually worked with Mr. Kiyosaki. He's a world-renowned investor and author of the New York Times bestseller Real Estate Riches, one of the books in the Rich Dad, Poor Dad Investment Advisory series. So he actually knows his stuff. Today, he joins us in the studio to tell us about the latest trends in property investing. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Dolf de Roos. Let's begin. So it's been more than 10 years since that popular book came out, the bestseller.
Right.
Has anything changed? Something has to have changed in terms of the strategies with real estate industry changing.
Well, surprisingly, with strategies, very little changes. And the way I always compare it is I spent 8 years getting a PhD in electrical engineering, and yet everything I've learned has been made redundant by new technology. Whereas what one might have learned 10 years ago in real estate still applies. Equity is still equity and collateral is still collateral.
The principles still remain.
The principles still remain, exactly. But there has been a recent trend that has sort of sprung itself upon the world, not just in real estate, upon business in general, and it's called crowdfunding. And some people may have heard of it already. The most common example is Kickstarter, where if you had a technological idea, you could put it on Kickstarter, and instead of raising, say, $500,000 from one venture capitalist or angel financier, you could now go to Kickstarter and perhaps get 1,000 people putting in $500 each. It's the same $500,000, but you can now fund your project, and the venture capitalist doesn't own 80% of it. So it's changing fundamentally how money is raised. And as recently as last year, governments around the world have changed the rules on how we might apply these crowdfunding ideas to real estate. It's very exciting.
I've heard like these sorts of things. You mentioned technologies. I've heard like people want to get films produced and almost any kind of project or business off the ground.
Yes,
anything. So how is it going to, the principles still apply in the same way to real estate when it comes to crowdfunding then?
The principles still apply, but again, instead of requiring one investor to put up, say, $1 million to start some small project, and as we know, the high-rise towers here in Singapore, they might cost 200 or 300 million. So you need a massive big investor and a strong bank. Now you can crowdfund these and go to the masses and basically put it on a portal on the internet and get investors from around the world putting in relatively small lumps.
Well, that sounds good for the developer, but what about the investor? If I put $1,000 in a project, for example, I feel like I need something tangible to get out of it. I don't know.
Well, you would get something tangible. You'd get a return on your $1,000. But the way to look at it, Annalisa, is to say that prior to crowdfunding, there's no way you could have participated maybe in a project like this. I couldn't have, because you might have needed 100 million. And now $100 or $1,000 is enough to get you in.
Now this is I mean, straight off the bat, having you here is wonderful to talk about real estate, and this is the first thing. It's obviously on your mind as being one of the biggest and newest things that people out there should be thinking about. Is that right?
Exactly, yes. And in fact, that's what brought me to Singapore this time. There was a big conference on crowdfunding of real estate here put on by Co-Assets. And the Singaporean government has helped sponsor it. Singapore's always been at the forefront of what's happening at new trends. And often when I want to see what's happening in the world of real estate, I take a peek at what's happening in Singapore. And I'm not saying that to pander. It really is. When you look at the designs here, the architecture, it is just astounding. So I take my proverbial hat off to Singapore for being at the
speed at which these new buildings keep coming up as well.
And that. I mean, it's been a year since I was here, and I've already seen new buildings and new developments going on. It's astounding.
Well, the industry is relatively young still, so what about regulations? Is any of this kosher? Like, how is it regulated? What are some of the kind of concerns I should have as an investor?
Well, there are always concerns, and any government always has to have a fine line between regulating things to stop the fraudsters coming in, but still making things free enough so that entrepreneurial people with good intent can do things. And if you over-regulate, then you stifle enterprise. And if you under-regulate, you allow the cowboys to come in. And in my humble view, Singapore's got a very good balance. Right now, as I understand it, and as a disclaimer, I'm no attorney on this matter, but as I understand it, Singapore doesn't have any fixed rules at the moment regarding crowdfunding. They're monitoring it. But they are encouraging the concept. Because when you think about it, a relatively small percentage of the population has access to real estate. When you look at a national population, estimates are that somewhere between 10 and 12% can invest in real estate. And crowdfunding will open that up to a lot more people.
So is there there's an aspect of speculation, though, and one of the things that always drives up property prices everywhere is that people speculate. They money comes in and it gets all exciting and governments tend to, they like, of course they like that sort of thing, but then there are times, that cooling measures come in to kind of cool the market. We've seen that happen here in Singapore.
And in Hong Kong, several places in the region.
In the region as well. So I just want to ask you about how would this crowdfunding not then, with the proliferation of being accessible to so many people almost instantly, in effect, I mean, you could do it now, not sort of encourage that kind of speculation in the market?
I don't think so. I agree that there is an element of speculation, but I don't think that's the main reason why prices overshoot and then undershoot. I think it's human nature. When things are going well, when prices are going up, usually through population growth rather than speculation. In fact, here in Singapore, prime example, you've had tremendous above regional average population growth, and you've also had above regional average growth in capital value. So it's through the population growth. But when prices do go up, some people, with foolish reasons, tend to think, well, it's going to go like that forever, so they tend to buy more and more, and then you can tell that a bubble is going to burst. I think it's more through over-enthusiasm on the part of investors than absolutely speculating and counting on it. So it overshoots, and then when it goes down, they all get into this doom and gloom mode. We forget that real estate goes in cycles, and we think it's going to be doom and gloom forever, and no one buys, and then prices are cheap again. So I think that's the fundamental reason, and in my view, crowdfunding of real estate will help even out those highs and lows, because now it's going to be the masses rather than the few in control of the money who can make those decisions.
So it's over a wider spread.
Correct.
Well, we always hear about due diligence when you're investing in real estate. Now, when you're investing something from an online platform, you can't really go to a showroom, you can't see it. I mean, isn't there a concern there of being able to do your full due diligence? I can't say the word.
That's how hard it is.
Oh, yes.
That's very tough to
I mean, that's important.
I'm so excited that you raised that, because here's where crowdfunding has the biggest advantage of all. The best way to compare it is to think of eBay. We've all toyed on eBay and bought a few things and sold a few things. When I go to buy something on eBay, one of the first things I check out are the ratings of the seller. How have other previous buyers rated him? Has he delivered? Has he packaged it well? Has he delivered on time? And was the item as described? And if he's got any slightly negative feedback, I stay well clear of that. Well, being crowdfunded, since it will be through a portal on the internet, we will similarly have ratings of everyone putting projects up and people who've invested in them, so that you can see whether it's any good. I think it's going to take a lot of the ability for shysters to offer deals that aren't that good away, because it's now fully transparent.
Well, and since we have a real estate expert like yourself on our show, I just wanted to get a quick gauge from you on the hot markets that one recent report had, that was just released, had named. So the top markets: Tokyo, Shanghai, Jakarta, Manila. Singapore came in 7th. This is according to the Urban Land Institute and PricewaterhouseCoopers. What do you think about those markets? What do you think about those rankings? Good markets, you think?
They're all good markets, but like any ranking, you have to decide what are you using as your criteria. We at Wealth Migrate try to migrate wealth to where the markets are most efficient and hottest in that moment. Every city can claim to be the top city based on some criterion. It's either absolute population growth or marginal population growth or the low rise in price of food or something. So all these markets are good, and some have challenges. I mean, there's a bit of overcrowding in Singapore. That's why many Singaporeans are looking at retiring outside of Singapore. Shanghai's got great growth, but there's a pollution problem there right now. So it's not as if there's an absolute, these are the top 5. One would have to ask, what are your criteria? What about comfort of living and ease of commuting around, and how safe is it, and all that sort of thing. And the real trick is to wake up each morning and do what you're passionate about and invest in things that return you a good return. And when you put your head down on your pillow at night, you say, wow, today was fun and I'm looking forward to tomorrow. If you're doing that, then you're being successful. If you don't meet those criteria, then maybe you should change what you're doing.
Well, on that note, thank you for all your advice. Good insight there. Look forward to learning more about crowdfunding as well. Thank you so much. That was Dr. Dolf de Roos, world-renowned investor and author of the best-selling book, Real Estate Riches. And don't go away. Business News is up next on First Look Asia. We'll check in on early regional trade. Stay with us.